Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Kevin, darling, can you hear me? Christina said embarrassedly into the phone to her husband. Do you have a minute? At the other end of the phone, you could hear an agonized sigh. Christina, what is it? Can you talk normally? I'm very busy right now. The wife involuntarily bit her lip with resentment. She did not understand why she could deserve such a neglectful attitude from her beloved Kevin. It's nothing much. Really, she said carefully, hoping her husband wouldn't get angry. I just wanted to tell you that I missed you so much. I love you. Her husband answered something inaudible, but Christina did not ask again, for fear of causing her husband even more irritation. You better tell me, how do you feel? Asked suddenly with genuine concern in his voice Kevin. What do the doctors say? Is the baby healthy? Christina's face instantly lit up with a joyful smile. So he did care about her and their child, and the rest must have been just her imagination. The doctor had said it could happen to pregnant women from an overabundance of hormones. It's common, right up until the last trimester. Yeah, I'm fine. The mommy-to-be replied happily. The doctors say that me and the baby, we are both healthy. Everything is going great. I will give birth in about a week. Well, that's the important thing. The most important thing is that you, my son, are fine. You don't have to worry about the rest, calmly answered the husband, and in his voice, Christina caught some new satisfied notes. It was as if Kevin had convinced himself of something that his young wife was not supposed to know. Kevin? Christina asked again. What now? Honey, hurry up. You're going to make me late for the stockholders' meeting. You know what kind of piranhas are on the board. I was wondering how Clara is doing. She complained to me the other day that her blood pressure's up again. The doctor prescribed her pills, but I'm not sure she's taking them. Could you make sure she doesn't forget them while I'm away? Clara was the mother of her husband, Kevin, and consequently, Christina's own mother-in-law. Despite the fact that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was extremely strained, Christina always tried to help in any way she could. The young woman was especially worried about the health of her mother-in-law. She always felt bad as soon as she and Kevin began to discuss joint plans for the future, which did not involve Clara. Of course, Christina guessed that the cause of frequent indispositions of her mother-in-law is banal jealousy. But out of respect for the honorable age of her mother-in-law and her sincere love for Kevin, the girl tried not to pay attention to the constant reproaches and nags to her on the part of Clara. Don't worry, Christina. Everything is fine with Mom. Smiling at his wife in the phone, Kevin replied. You know how impressionable she is. Again, probably, she thought of something too much. That's why her blood pressure went up. Yeah, I guess so. She hesitantly stretched out her spouse, but reminded him again. And still control the medication, okay? It's a hypertensive crisis. It's no joke. Okay, Christina, I'm really in a hurry right now. Why don't I call you again tonight, and we'll talk? I can't talk anymore. Kisses. After that, Christina's husband abruptly disconnected. The pregnant woman sighed and quietly went to her bed. She needed to rest as much as possible. That's what the doctor said. The baby was developing normally, but there were still small risks of complications. Therefore, the doctor monitored the condition of the young woman in labor, preferring to reinsure herself once again, so as not to jeopardize the life of mother and child. Something, Christina. Your husband is not very happy about the upcoming addition to the family, right? Miranda asked her mockingly. A young girl pregnant with triplets. Miranda was from the village and had a very rough temper for some reason. Sometimes it seemed to Christina that her roommate was basically unpleasant when others were doing well in life. Miranda herself would never meet anyone after discharge. Her boyfriend dumped her as soon as he found out she was pregnant, so the girl prepared to raise her children alone. Christina felt sorry for her, though she was sometimes amazed at the poor girl's tactlessness. But Christina understood that such behavior for Miranda, most likely a defense mechanism that helped her to accept the fact that she now somehow will have to raise 3 children at once and without any support. No, Miranda, why not? Question for question, Christina answered her. Kevin loves me very much, and he was just asking about my health. Yeah, I heard. The neighbor rudely interrupted her, and he was in a hurry to get somewhere. I guess that's no way to talk to your favorite wife. What are you talking about? Christina didn't understand her. I mean that he was trying to get rid of you on the phone, as if he was so fed up with you. A satisfied smile flashed across Miranda's face. She had managed to awaken some doubts in Christina. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't at work right now, but with some girl in a hotel room somewhere. Champagne, roses, and all the classics, just the way men like it. Miranda, please stop saying such nasty things. The neighbor shouted at her. But why do you take such pleasure in spoiling other people's moods? Why should they all walk around smiling? And I alone should weep that I and my boys will not have a father. But chickens like you, everything is always good. And a handsome husband, a businessman, and a huge house, and even mother-in-law does not spoil their lives. And the main thing is, why is it so that some people get everything and others get a hole from a bagel? I may also dream of a normal husband, and now I have to go back to the village with 3 children. God, if I had only known then that everything would turn out this way, I would have made an abortion right away and would not have dragged it out until the last minute, hoping that this red-haired guy would come to his senses and come back to me. Miranda's face twisted and tears streamed down her face. A second later, there were first thin sobs and then full-blown sobs. Miranda, honey, why are you doing this to yourself? Christina clung to her, trying to hug the unhappy girl. I'm sure you have some understanding people in your village. Maybe they will help you as neighbors, and then suddenly, your boyfriend as his children will see, so immediately and return to you. Where else will he find such happiness? Miranda picked up Christina with one hand and grabbed her stomach with the other. Ouch! Suddenly the girl cried out. What? What is it? Worried Christina. Ouch! Miranda cried out again, but this time much louder. Christina, call the doctor quickly. It seems to have started. Christina, without a moment's hesitation, ran out into the corridor and informed the nurse what had happened. Miranda was taken away to deliver the baby the same day. A couple of hours later, she returned to the room as a completely different person. Not for nothing they say that motherhood can dramatically change a woman's character. There was no trace of the former prickly girl. Miranda was always cooing about something, telling Christina about her amazing triplets. And then, when they were brought in for feeding, she had a chance to see for herself how cute they really were. For a split second, Christina even envied Miranda with white envy. Despite the fact that Miranda had an uncertain and difficult future ahead of her, she looked like the happiest woman in the world. Christina also wanted to experience this feeling, but she realized that she had only a short time to wait before she would meet her own son, lying in her room at night. Christina stroked her belly and reflected on life. She was 30, and this was her first child, to whom she was going to give all the love that had lived in her heart since long ago. Every single day she thanked God for giving her such a wonderful husband like Kevin. They met only 3 years ago, and that meeting really changed the young woman's life. Christina then worked as a simple saleswoman in a bookstore and did not expect not only to get married, but even to enter into any serious long-term relationship. With Robert, her last boyfriend, the girl broke up only a month ago. He decided that he was worthy of much more than some cashier, so he preferred Christina to some girl. Christina was very upset then. She really liked Robert, and she did not rule out that they could get married. However, the young guy suddenly wanted fame and money. In spite of the fact that before that he worked as an ordinary cab driver and never complained about anything, the girl could not understand how this girl was able to charm her man. But in fact, Robert left her a very long and boring letter in which he said that she, Christina, was too down to earth for him, while his soul longed for something sublime and extraordinary. That day, Christina stood at her workplace and laid out stationery in the cashier's area, when suddenly she was approached by a tall, trim brunette in an expensive suit. "Girl, excuse me, and you will help me choose a book as a gift, something on art, but very well designed. I need it for my business partner." Looking up and down into those stunning dark blue eyes, Christina realized that she had never seen a man with such a rare appearance. He looked like he had stepped out of the pages of a fashion magazine. And if he was not standing in front of her now, she would not have believed that men with such spectacular appearance existed, but, among other things, she was pleasantly surprised by the politeness with which the customer addressed her. Usually people in the hall just yanked her in different directions, wanting to get a quicker building, and at the same time and pouring on the poor saleswoman the entire portion of their own bile accumulated during the day. Here, everything was quite different. Of course, what kind of book do you need? Painting or perhaps architecture? The beautiful stranger smiled charmingly and asked to show him all the most expensive books on painting that they had in the store. Finally, after half an hour, the man chose a Dutch painting album with a gold-plated cover. "It's beautiful." Christina praised the purchase. "I can see that you are a man of taste." "Thank you," calmly said the man, and again gave the girl one of his stunning smiles. "You are a wonderful professional in your business, so patiently helped me to choose all this. I hope my partner will be satisfied." The stranger paid, and Christina did not see him again. However, a week later he showed up again, and again asked the girl to pick up a good book for him. Only this time something from modern literature, something fashionable. "What are the older ladies reading today?" he asked. Christina said to herself as she led him to a shelf of modern dramas. "Don't be surprised," he said softly. "It's not for me. It's for my mom. She asked me to bring her something new. And I, alas, am not in the trend, if I may say so. What intellectually savvy women read nowadays. The same as 100 years ago." Christina laughed. The key to the success of any women's novel is a charming protagonist and a gentle heroine. And then everything is built around the two of them. Out of the corner of her eye, Christina noticed how the customer looked at her a little more closely than usual. "Excuse me, but would you consider it impertinent if I asked you your name?" Christina was slightly confused and then nodded at her name tag. "I'm sorry, I didn't notice." Christina then, when the stranger said the girl's name, she thought the floor swayed under her feet. Her name had never sounded so beautiful. "My name is Kevin." He gave her a slight nod, then gently shook her fragile little hand. "Christina, what are you doing tonight? You know, it's been a long time since I've met a girl who has read so many books and knows almost all of them by title and cover color. I'm kidding, of course, but I really like you. How about we go out to dinner tonight?" "Oh," she hesitated. "It's so sudden. I don't even have anything to wear." "That's not a problem. Kevin spoke quickly. "If you want, we'll stop by the boutique right after work and get you a cocktail dress." "What time do you get off?" No, 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 no. No way. The girl was embarrassed and began to wrap her flaming face with her palms. She was becoming unbearably ashamed at the mere thought of the fact that this amazing man offered her to buy an evening dress, which in addition, and probably cost a lot of money. "I don't think you can find a dress in a boutique for a few thousand." "Excuse me." Kevin was embarrassed in turn. "I'm probably rushing things, and you're not used to this. It's just that the art book we picked out together, my partner was absolutely thrilled with it. So I wanted to thank you in a human way. You can't even imagine how you unknowingly helped me close one of the best deals for my company." That's how Christina found out that her sudden admirer was also a big businessman. In the end, they agreed that they would meet at 9 o'clock at her house, and from there they would go to the restaurant. Christina could not believe her luck, and in general that such a solid luxury man as Kevin invited her on a date, even out of a sense of pure gratitude. The girl has always been pleased to spend the evening in the company of good and well-mannered people. The first dinner together had gone splendidly. Kevin turned out to be a very interesting and attentive interlocutor, and in conversation he constantly emphasized how pleased he was to meet on his way such a charming, but at the same time intelligent girl. In the end, he charmed poor Christina so much that she was ready to give him her heart that very evening, even though she realized how foolish it was. The first date was followed by a second, and then a third and fourth. Kevin and Christina officially became a couple and did not hide their relationship. Love bloomed fresh roses in her soul, and the simple bookstore clerk could no longer hide her feelings for the businessman, especially since he made it clear to the girl that this is the kind of bride and dreamed of all his life. "Christina, I promise you, if you become my wife, you will never have to work in the store again," Kevin assured her. After a couple of months, he held in his hands a tiny velvet box, inside of which lay a gold ring with a magnificent diamond. "I want you to add to my home library," he told her, smiling, "so that you can continue the work of my parents and bring something new and beautiful into our home and my life. I firmly believe that you will be the only woman in this world who could do something like that. Tell me, Christina, will you marry me?" Christina felt tears running down her cheeks. It seemed that she had gone from real life to a fairy tale. Is it possible? But what would happen if she woke up now and it was all just a magical dream? "God, I can't believe it's real." Crying with happiness, said Christina. "Oh my God, of course it is." Yes, the man hugged her, and in that moment they felt like the happiest people in the world. Kevin literally carried his bride in his arms, constantly making her expensive gifts in the form of jewelry, exquisite clothes and perfumes, and of course, the best books he could find. Soon the businessman announced to his mother that Christina officially moves into their mansion. However, Clara, becoming clearly insane, jealous of her only son to her future daughter-in-law, was adamantly opposed to both the move itself and the wedding in general. "Son, have you decided to reduce me to the grave?" asked an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s. "What, Christina? What moving? What wedding, after all? Do you think that if father is no longer alive, you can disgrace our family forever? Mom, you always exaggerate everything." Kevin replied with a slight smile. "You've seen my fiancée. She's the purest, kindest girl I've ever met in my life. Don't you want your son to be happy? Have you decided that you will be happy with her?" Question for question, the mother answered, hungrily, squinting her ice blue eyes. "With this orphan, practically a beggar without 5 minutes. What happened to the parents? Would you remind me?" "Mom, I'm begging you." Her son tried to calm her down, but there was no stopping her. "If I'm not mistaken, they died in a fire when your Christina was 9. "Yeah, so what?" Kevin said defiantly. "So Kevin, that girl has had a huge psychological trauma in her head since she was a child." The woman expressively twisted her finger at her temple, alluding to her son's fiancée. Indeed, one could understand the feelings of a woman who now has to share her son with his young wife. But so, alas, it happens sooner or later in all families. The only thing that comforted the girl was that Kevin, for all the loyalty of his mother's character, always remained on the side of his future wife. Even when Clara expressed a desire to personally help Christina with the choice of wedding dress, the groom decided that it was a bad idea and did not let his mother spoil the holiday. It was necessary to see how green then the future mother-in-law of the girl. It seemed that she hated Christina with all her gut, so much that she was ready to sizzle her with just one look. The wedding was held in one of the most expensive restaurants in the country. Since Christina herself had almost no friends and family, most of the guests were high-ranking personalities from the business circles of her young husband. Unfortunately, the only close person of the girl's Aunt Betty, who brought up her niece after the tragic death of her parents, died shortly before Christina met her husband. Therefore, Christina simply had no one to invite to the wedding, unless you counted a few co-workers at the bookstore. Christina kept her dignity and tried her best to prove to herself and her husband that she too could be an elegant young lady of society. Kevin appreciated the girl's behavior and later praised her for not giving his mother an excuse to poke her nose into their business with Christina. The girl was immensely proud of herself that night. Afterwards, she made several attempts to reconcile with Clara, but everything was in vain. No matter how much the girl tried to please the future mother-in-law, it was simply impossible. Time and again the woman reproached Christina that she is not educated enough, poorly aware of the rules of etiquette, and in general absolutely not suitable for her son. Obviously, before her mother-in-law already had in mind for Kevin the so-called favorable party. Christina, with her appearance, just confused the mother of the businessman all plans. The first year of married life became for Christina the happiest. Kevin's business flourished, but he found enough time for his young wife, although he felt a lot of pressure from her mother. Clara strenuously pretended that Christina as a person and daughter-in-law for her simply does not exist. However, Christina was not against and look in her eyes invisible, just so as not to hear once again in his address offensive, but most importantly completely unfounded accusations and reproaches. When at the end of the first year of marriage, she and Kevin could not have children, Slaka frankly rejoiced. "Well, son, the whole truth about your Christina has come out. She's not gonna give you kids, you can count on it. I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that she had an abortion when she was young. So she can't have children, and she didn't tell you about it, just to marry you as soon as possible. Why are you talking about me like that?" Christina couldn't stand it. It happens often and in many couples. The first year is not an indicator of whether your son and I will have children or not. Maybe we should just wait a year. I'm willing to go to counseling, but I'm sure I don't have any health problems. My mother-in-law just snorted contemptuously. What kind of guarantees can be here that you in the city counseling center do not have girlfriends? Or what, you Banal there do not buy a certificate? Do you think I'm stupid? No, honey, you're not fooling me. I knew right away what you were. Clara squinted at me evilly. My boy couldn't possibly be interested in a gray moth like you, unless you did something on purpose to do so. But mark my words, if you put something on my Kevin, I'll bury you in the damp earth myself. Do you understand me? Kevin, who was present, came close to his mother and said seriously, "Mom, until when are you going to say all this nonsense? What kind of nonsense are you talking? You're a cultured woman after all, and our business with Christina, let alone having children, doesn't concern you at all. I'll argue with you on that one, son." His mother answered him in the same tone, "I am very much concerned with the affairs of your offspring, because who, you tell me, is going to run the company when you're gone? I think I'm well enough to think about such things." Kevin responded with wicked irony in his voice, "Son, we are living in dangerous times." The mother-in-law's lips quivered. "It's unclear what's going on everywhere. Don't you want to be sure that your own son or daughter will be the head of the house after you leave? And I see you're going to bury me already?" Kevin snapped at her, but Christina, whose heart at that moment was breaking with pain for the people close to her, could not stand it and exclaimed, "Clara, Kevin, that's enough. Please do not quarrel because of me." Tears glistened in the eyes of the unhappy daughter-in-law for the second time this evening. "Clara, if you insist, I can bring you a certificate from the hospital that I'm fine. You will choose the clinic where I will be examined to avoid the possibility of a substitute diagnosis on my part. Don't even think about it, Christina." Kevin roared. "She has no right to condemn herself to such an utterly despicable and humiliating ordeal. What is this, the Middle Ages? You and I will figure out when to have children on our own, without the spectacle of this." At that moment, Kevin's mother had a heart attack. "Oh, I don't feel so good, son." "Mom, stop clowning around." Kevin calmly responded, "Don't think I'll fall for your tricks again." "Wait, Kevin, what if she's really sick?" Christina got worried and rushed to her mother-in-law. "Clara, where do you have a heartache?" The mother-in-law hesitantly touched first the chest area and then the head. "Tonometer? Christina? Please hurry up. I think my blood pressure has spiked again." The daughter-in-law rushed into the living room to get the device, and when she returned, she heard only a scrap of conversation between mother and son, in which Clara strongly warned her son. "Keep in mind, son, if you don't have children in a year, blame yourself." The girl stood with the tonometer pressed to her chest and froze, unable to move. So Clara had tricked her again. But why? Why did she hate her so much and turn her own son against her so zealously? Was it only because Christina had the misfortune to be born into a very poor family? The thought of it was so disgusting to the girl that she quietly put the pressure gauges in place and silently went up to her room. And now, almost a year later, she was expecting her and Kevin's first child. Christina really wanted to name the boy Ethan in honor of his grandfather, but did not know whether Kevin himself would approve of such a choice. However, her husband during the pregnancy noticeably distanced from her, and the girl even began to worry about it. He was almost no interest in his wife, more often late at work. Christina herself timed and again caught the gloating glances of her mother-in-law. The future mother did not know what could be associated with such behavior of her husband, and therefore all the time was tormented by speculation, what she did wrong. After Miranda's roommate Christina gave birth, Kevin stopped calling his wife. With each new day, the anxiety in the soul of the woman only increased. After all, when she dialed her husband's number, he invariably dropped the call. What is this business? Christina said to herself, winding circles around the ward. She was about to give birth. She had not heard a word from her husband. Is that any way to treat a pregnant wife? Christina thought. Did Clara have a hand in their relationship? But she couldn't be crazy enough to risk the health of her own grandchild. What if something terrible happened to Kevin? God, I wish I'd thought of that before. It flashed through the girl's mind. She immediately called her mother-in-law. However, she was waiting for the same picture as in the case of calls to her spouse. No one answered the phone, or the line was immediately cut off. What the hell is this? Walked forward the girl, when suddenly felt how much she had tightened inside her stomach. Here we go, Christina realized, and immediately called for a nurse. 4.5 hours later, Christina gave birth to a strong, healthy baby boy. "Congratulations," said the satisfied midwife, handing her her son. $3,500. A real big boy. Have you thought of a name yet? Ethan. Christina responded instantly, no longer able to change anything. If Kevin didn't answer the phone, she would make the decision for both of them. Ethan, that's a nice name, soft, the nurse said, and then took the baby away from the woman for all the necessary procedures. Don't worry, Christina. We will bring you a boy for feeding. Only a little later. Has the husband been informed? Yes. Christina lied in a weak voice. He said he'd be here soon. He's just busy at work at the moment. The midwife and nurse looked at each other, but said nothing. A few hours later, little Ethan was brought to Christina, and she was able to admire her tiny son for the first time. How sweet you are. What a beautiful, wonderful, most favorite boy, Christina said, kissing her son on his forehead and hands. After feeding Ethan, the young mother immediately fell into a pleasant sleep. Rest properly. You will need it now, the nurse admonished her. You won't be able to sleep properly for at least 6 months. I don't care, Christina answered her as she fell asleep. The main thing is that Ethan is with me now. A week after the birth, no one came to pick her up. From excitement and anxiety, Christina almost lost her milk. However, the doctors advised her to calm down. Mom, maybe just something happened at home that now no one can meet her. Imagining the worst, Christina called a cab to the maternity hospital and went home. She and her husband and his mother lived out of town, so the cab driver demanded payment up front. He said there might not be enough gas, so it was better to fill up on the way. Christina obediently gave him the card. However, after a couple of seconds, the driver unhappily said, "Lady, are you trying to cheat me?" Christina hesitated. "I do not know what you mean." "My husband put enough money on my card to pay for the cab ride." The driver turned to her and shook her own card in the air. "Zero, girl, zero. There's no money on your card. Or is it blocked?" Christina, cradling a crying Ethan at that moment, only frowned. "Are you sure? Check it again, please. I distinctly remember there being enough funds in there." The cab driver shrugged silently and put the card to the reader again. The same unpleasant beeping sounded. "Alas," he said, "either pay or get out." Christina had no idea what was going on. But just in case, she rummaged through her purse and emptied out all the cash she could find, including change. There was only 60 cents in there, no more. "Is that enough to get me at least halfway there?" she asked the driver. He looked skeptically at the crumpled bills, but did not refuse. "I'll take you to the gas station, and then you can do it yourself." "All right," the young mother nodded. "Thanks for that." Having fulfilled his promise, the cab driver dropped her off at a small gas station, where Christina was able to wash and feed little Ethan and change his diaper. After that, the young woman threw her bag with baby things over her shoulder and dialed her husband's number and then her mother-in-law's number. A mechanical voice answered her that the subscriber was out of network, and here Christina was worried. With a quick step, the young mother covered the remaining distance to their cottage village. Although it was only a few miles, she felt terribly tired and exhausted. When she reached the gate of her house, The woman pressed the bell button several times before Clara's disgruntled face appeared on the intercom screen. "What do you want?" asked her mother-in-law in a tone as if she was standing in front of some homeless gypsy, not Clara's own daughter-in-law. "Thank God," Christina exhaled. "I was afraid something had happened to you." "It's me, Christina. Please open up. Kevin didn't come to pick me up for some reason, and he's not answering his phone. There must be something wrong with the connection. Look who I brought you." The girl smiled and showed the intercom screen her little grandson, but her mother-in-law's face reflected nothing but disgust. It was the last thing Christina had expected to see. "So, why are you showing me your freak? You'd think I'd be interested in what kind of puppy you gave birth to." The daughter-in-law was literally numb, unable to utter a single word. Then the intercom screen went off, and a couple minutes later the door of the mansion opened. From there, without hurrying, Clara came out and slowly approached the wicket, which was still closed. Christina pressed her heated forehead against the cold metal of the decorative lattice, unable to accept the reaction of her husband's mother. "Why did you come?" her mother-in-law asked her again. "It's not enough for you that you broke my son's heart, had a child from some lover. So now you want to throw him into our care?" "No, my dear, you will not succeed." The old woman wagged her index finger menacingly in front of Christina's face. "That's with whom you fattened your puppy. Go to him and go. And forget about our family forever. Kevin will mail you the divorce papers later." "Clara, what are you talking about?" Outraged, gasping from shock, Christina. "This is your grandson, your son Kevin. I never cheated on him with anyone. I swear." "You'll swear it in church, if you have the guts." Her mother-in-law threw it back at her. "Neither my son nor I want anything more to do with you. Is that clear to you? If you don't want Kevin to sand your reputation down so that you can't get a job in this town, you'd better get out of here while you still can. We don't want any loose girls in our family." With these words, Slaga turned around and silently headed back into the house, paying no attention to the crying. The sobs of her unhappy daughter-in-law with a newborn baby in her arms. Now the young woman realized what had happened. Lord, she had thought some terrible tragedy had happened to her husband and mother-in-law. Knave. Turns out Clara had somehow managed to turn Kevin against her. But what could she tell him so that he unconditionally believed in this unfair, and most importantly, absolutely stupid lie? Wanting to understand what had happened, Christina went on foot back to the city to come to her husband's office to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Christina got to her husband's office, being almost exhausted. With great difficulty, she managed to persuade the guard to let her through. The woman imagined how it looked from the outside, with a bag over her shoulder, covered in road dust, and with a baby in her arms. What did she look like now? However, everything compared to the last chance to see her husband and finally talk to him. Approaching his office, Christina took a few minutes to gather her courage. Strangely enough, no one was visible nearby. Even the place of Kevin's secretary was empty. And at that moment, the young mother heard strange sounds coming from her husband's office. Pushing the door open with her free hand, the woman stepped confidently inside. However, the sight that opened up to her completely de-energized Christina, making her legs go absorbent cotton. "Christina!" Kevin hurriedly corrected himself. "What are you doing here?" The secretary, a tall girl with long curly hair and huge swollen lips, only looked at her boss's wife contemptuously from head to toe, then easily jumped down from the table. The damsel defiantly threw on her jacket and, leaving the office, said to Kevin, "Call me when you're done." When she and her husband were alone, the woman immediately attacked her husband with reproaches. Kevin, what is the meaning of this? Don't tell me I got it all wrong. You mean you don't even lock the door anymore, so sure that you and that girl won't be disturbed? Why didn't you come and get me? You didn't even call me. I walked from the gas station to our house and then back. Because your mother wouldn't let me and her grandson, our son by the way, into our house. And now you're cheating on me. How long has this been going on? Why, instead of remorse, she read on the face of her husband only contempt. She'd never seen him like this before. Are you not even ashamed? She asked her husband in a weak voice. A cheeky smile played on Kevin's lips. Mom did the right thing, and what, in fact, can I do? In response, Christina gave him a confused, uncomprehending look. Are you saying that you don't understand anything? Kevin interrogated her caustically. You dare to stutter about it. He nodded dismissively at the newborn Ethan. Is that my baby? I don't understand anything, Kevin. Explain it to me. Christina sobbed. At that moment, Ethan woke up in her arms and cried softly. Kevin clutched his head and ruffled his beautiful dark hair. His face burned with a wild blush, as if he were sick, but his eyes remained as cold as ice. Look, he said to his wife, after a few minutes, showing her some pictures on his phone. Now you tell me, how do you explain this, and who is this strange man hugging you, my pregnant wife in some cafe? Christina leaned over to the smartphone screen to get a better look at the series of photos she was pictured in, supposedly with her lover, flipping to the right 5 photos in a row. Christina felt her legs grow colder and colder with each new photo. Finally, she carefully sat down on the office chair and placed Ethan on her husband's desk. Jesus, she whispered. Kevin, where did you get those pictures? The woman's eyes flashed with such intense desperation that it was physically impossible for her husband to lie to her. What's the difference? Mom sent them, he finally admitted. She was watching you just before you went into labor. She sensed the baby wasn't mine, so she tried to get proof. Proof of what? Kevin is my classmate Jacob. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. We ran into each other at the center that day. He offered to help me carry my bags to a cab. If that were true, he wouldn't have touched you so boldly. Kevin shouted stubbornly, Don't yell like that. You've already scared our son. Shouted to him, unable to contain her spouse's feelings. Yes, I went with him to the cafe. We had coffee and friendly. I repeat, especially for you in a friendly hug, and that's all. Nothing happened. That's not my son, don't lie to me. The businessman continued to stand his ground. How do I know you haven't met him before? And this child is not his. We can do a DNA test if you're so overcome with paranoia. Couldn't resist a little sarcasm, Christina. But how would you feel about that? What kind of trust are we talking about here? Kevin made a big circle around his office, and then with all his might slammed both fists on the table. Insane, Christina exclaimed, barely managing to grab Ethan out from under his arms. You and your mother have gone completely insane. How could you disown me so quickly? How could you believe her, knowing how much pain she has caused me, and always intended to cause our family as well? My mother would never lie to me about such things. Kevin answered her with a grim smile. Also, she brought me his tie, didn't she? That freak who is supposedly your classmate. That you played with him somewhere and forgot to return the tie to your lover? Christina laughed hysterically. Kevin, but you realize that she simply gave it to me. How can you believe in such blatant nonsense? If we're being honest, don't you carry around souvenirs from your secretary? And then it happened that forever divided the young mother's life into before and after. In a fit of anger, Kevin flew up to his wife and slapped her across the face with a ringing slap. Christina barely stayed on her feet, clutching her son tightly to her chest, glaring at her good husband, who didn't seem to have expected such a reaction from himself. Christina walked silently to the door. Christina, no, wait. Her husband wanted to justify himself, but she shook her head negatively. "Stay away from me," the woman said through gritted teeth. "Don't ever come near Ethan and me again." The next second, the young mother slipped through the doors like a cat and dashed for the elevator and farther downstairs. Away from this horrible person and place. Christina herself did not remember how long she ran. The young mother came to her senses only after a couple of hours. It turned out that she was sitting and crying on a playground in some yard. Little Ethan had fallen asleep in her arms, but that didn't make Christina feel any better. She no longer had anything to feed him when he woke up. From the stress she had been through, the young mother had completely lost her milk, not knowing what to do with no money and no further plan. The woman just sat on the bench and stared at one point as she continued to rock her baby. Tears of pain and disappointment rolled down her face in hail. Another betrayal of a loved one had hit Christina's nervous system too hard. "Christina, is that you?" A pleasant female voice suddenly sounded behind the young woman. Christina slowly turned around. Looking at the person who spoke, Christina even stiffened with amazement. In front of her stood her high school literature teacher, Vanessa, a diminutive older woman who was already in her late 70s. Looking at Christina with the same warm, affectionate smile she had when she was a child. "Vanessa, how did you recognize me?" The woman whispered in a voice weak from fatigue and hunger. The woman only grinned in response. "How could I not recognize you, my dear? I remember all my students. I have such a photographic memory. What are you doing here? Are you sitting here all alone? How small is your baby? You must have just given birth." Christina nodded silently. Then her former teacher came closer and looked carefully into Christina's face. "My dear, I can see you need help. Let's go to my place. I don't live far away. I have hot soup you can eat and feed your baby. Shall we?" "No, I can't," weakly objected Christina. "That I will burden you with my problems. Now I'll sit here a little rest, and Ethan and I will think of something." "Right, Ethan?" Christina looked at her son with inexpressible tenderness. After that, Vanessa was convinced that her former student was in a bad way. "Christina, don't give me any ideas," she said in a slightly more stern tone. "Where are you going now in the evening with a child? To the train station? And yourself and your little one you want to jeopardize?" "No, I feel really bad, Vanessa. I'm not sure you'd be comfortable with me and my son." "Don't you worry about whether I'm comfortable or not. If I wasn't comfortable, I wouldn't have offered. Right? Come on, get up. Don't sit in the cold, you'll get sick." Some time later, Christina was already eating hot soup and a big piece of black bread. And little Ethan, washed and dressed, was lying in a cozy wooden cradle. "It was left from my granddaughter," she explained to Christina. "My daughter had given birth, and then when Lisa's crib became too small, we wanted to throw it away, but I felt too sorry for it. So I kept it." "Thank you, Vanessa." The young mother thanked her from the bottom of her heart. "If it were not for you, I really do not know where we would be now. It all came at once. There is no end to my problems." Christina drove a spoon around the bottom of the plate. "And you tell me what happened to you." The old woman advised her. "Maybe the two of us will figure it out faster. What should you do next? Are you sure you want to hear this? Just in case, The young woman asked again. I'm afraid there is much less pleasant in this story than disgusting. Let's get started, cheerfully suggested the old woman. I'm an old man. I'll find something to say if it's really hard. Don't worry. And Christina told her the whole story. Finally, when the former student told her savior how her husband dared to raise his hand on her, Vanessa only splashed her hands. What kind of a bastard is that? No, how is it possible so native son and not recognize? I tried to explain everything to him, but he was as if in a trance. He didn't want to listen to me. Christina explained. First he threw accusations, and then he attacked you. What a raging dog! The teacher finished for her. I'll tell you something, Christina. A mother's influence on her child is very great. If it was his mother who turned him against you, then there's no choice. He'll choose her over you. That's what's so terrible. Almost crying, Christina said to the teacher, I don't understand. At what point and why did he suddenly change so much towards me? Here is the cross that I never cheated on my husband. Christina crossed herself 3 times, and he just out of her door immediately began an affair with his secretary. Christina, unable to bear the pressure of her feelings, burst into tears. Vanessa immediately began to comfort her. Don't cry so much, don't worry. Now you have someone to care for you and to give your love to. If your husband does not come to his senses, then he is not your man. And such things happen in life, and you can live with it. But what about Vanessa? Burying herself in the woman's lap, sobbing, Christina whispered, I love him so much. I can't see my life without him. Can't see or can't see. There are 2 big differences. The old woman grinned. If you think that you will love him all your life, then you need to understand what and how. Talk to him again. But if you feel that your love for him is over, you don't need to try and rekindle that extinguished fire. Then life has a different road in store for you. Christina stopped crying and looked at the old woman again. Wow, and I didn't even think about it, she said. I once loved him very much. I was ready to give my life for him. But after today, the young woman hesitated for a moment before answering. After he hit me, it was like something inside me broke. You know, as if a rope had been sawed through, and everything, the weight attached to it, was flying into the abyss. And I, like that weight, am flying somewhere I don't know where to. Vanessa smiled. Maybe you are not flying to the abyss, but on the contrary, you are flying up to the sky. Think about it. The old woman winked at her pupil. Now let's get ready for bed. I'll make a bed for you and the baby in my daughter's former room. I have fresh linen and new furniture. Sleep well, and tomorrow we'll think about what you should do. You will stay with me for now. It will be easier together. Christina thanked Vanessa as she had never thanked anyone in her life. Who would have thought that after so many years, she would not only meet her former teacher, but also get from her the only one of all support, and the best help that she could give Christina at that moment. And so they all began to live together. Vanessa's payment was enough to feed not only herself, but also Christina. The young mother ate very little and used to do with the simplest products. The half-starved childhood with Aunt Betty was an influence. However, the young woman could not afford to just hang on the neck of her former teacher. So soon she went to work. Kevin, it seems, fulfilled the promise made to his wife by his mother and deprived his wife of the opportunity to get a job back in at least some more or less decent place. But Christina did not despair. She went to work to put up ads. She did it quickly. It took her a couple of hours a day, and then got the money and hurried to the store to buy all the necessary things for her son. One day, when Christina stood at the bus stop and passed at the next batch of outdoor ads, she was called by a familiar voice. Christina, "Christina, how did you get here?" Hearing the familiar timbre, the woman cringed, less than anything else in the world. She wanted Jacob, the same high school classmate who had caused her to leave her husband, to see her like this. "I can see it's you, Christina. Stop it, please." She turned to face the man and read the mute amazement in his eyes. "What does it mean?" he asked seriously. "The last time I saw you, you were doing great. You were going to be a mother. And now, is the baby okay?" Jacob sounded worried, and Christina was pleased that he still remembered how she felt the last time they met. "Don't worry, Jacob. Everything's fine. I had a boy named Ethan." "Oh, thank God." He exhaled. "It's just that you said the doctors wanted to monitor you longer. So you're going to the hospital earlier." Christina smiled, embarrassed, and there was an awkward silence between them. "How are you doing?" Christina asked casually. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Jacob smiled and pointed at the bulky bags in his hands. "Yes, I want to visit my mom. I've been promising for a long time, but I haven't had time. We opened 2 new salons last week. I had to check so many documents. It was horrible." Bright eyes of the classmate looked at Christina with such calmness and kindness that she involuntarily transferred his positive outlook on life. She remembered that Jacob ran a chain of car dealerships around the city. His business was doing well. "Do you want me to help you carry the bags?" Christina asked him out of the blue. She didn't know why she wanted to offer him that now. After all, what does she have to lose? Her husband's love could not be returned to her anyway. Jacob was not to blame for the fact that Clara used him in her nefarious plans to get rid of a bad daughter-in-law, and the classmate always treated her well and even began to worry about the health of her tiny son. "Won't you get scolded?" asked Jacob, pointing to the stack of ads in her bag. "No, I still have time." The woman answered him cheerfully and picked up one of his grocery bags. As they'd approached the house where her mother lived, Christina had a strange feeling in her heart. But when they entered the entrance and began to climb to the 3rd floor, the woman's eyes— "Okay, Mom, I'll go, I guess. I will not take you, Christina, from important matters." Jacob suddenly started to go, and his mother just grinned. "Oh, look at him, Christina. What a businessman. All this business is burning under his feet, that he cannot even an extra 5 minutes with his mother to sit." Christina genuinely admired watching the relationship between Jacob and his mother. Unlike her experience and what she had seen between Kevin and Clara, there was not even a hint of the dependency and manipulative tendencies that her mother-in-law possessed to perfection. Yes, these people behaved much more simply, but there was such kindness and love in their hearts. The kind you don't see every day between parents and children these days. "Christina, then let's meet on Monday," Jacob suggested. "I'll take you right away from here and pick you up and show you everything you need to do in our salon, okay?" "Sure." The woman nodded to him. "Jacob, thank you so much again. If it weren't for you—" "Don't go on." Waved goodbye to her classmate. "That's it. I'm off. I'll call you the other day." 6 months flew by. Christina studied at Jacob's company and started working as a manager. She and her son rented their own, quite comfortable apartment, and every week they came to visit Vanessa. Jacob himself didn't mind. During the time they worked together, the former classmates felt that they were united by something much deeper than the usual working relationship. Jacob was easier to talk to than Kevin. He had a good sense of humor, but most surprisingly, he was able to get along with Ethan right away. Christina, watching them play in those moments when the man stopped by her house, was only amused. Of course, Jacob gave toys to the child, and with his mother he solved exclusively business issues in the kitchen. but they both already felt how between them formed some new, completely unlike anything else connection. And then one day the man decided to invite the young mom on their first real date. Jacob was very excited and prepared a huge bouquet of scarlet roses for his companion. Christina appreciated the compliment. She was pleased with such attention. After all, despite all the ordeals, part of her feminine soul still wanted warmth and care. Wow! And where are we going to go with such a bouquet? Surprised Christina. We will not be allowed to go to the museum. And we will not go to the museum. Jacob agreed. Let's you now put the flowers in a vase at home, and then we'll go to the opera. I got 2 tickets to the Mermaid. I think you're gonna love it. I can't believe you like opera. The woman admired me wholeheartedly. Sometimes for a change, nodded the businessman. A few minutes after Christina took the bouquet upstairs, Jacob opened the door of his snow-white car in front of her. Please, my dear lady, today a rich cultural program awaits you. Oh, don't call me lady, okay? She asked him. I have not liked this title recently. Jacob understood what she was saying and promised her not to do it again. Christina and her mother told him in general terms about what had happened, avoiding unnecessarily dramatic details. However, the main conclusion the young man had already made for himself. This Kevin and his strange mother are real monsters. After the opera, which Christina really liked very much, the couple decided to walk around the central square. That's where their first kiss happened between them. Jacob did not remember exactly how he embraced his companion. He only felt a long and strong golden thread between his heart and Christina's heart. What will happen to us now? Christina whispered to him, pulling away reluctantly from his lips. What will happen? You'll divorce your husband, we'll get married, and I'll adopt Ethan. Christina gently pulled away from her classmate. Are you seriously telling me this now? She asked, looking Jacob in the eyes. Are you really ready to live with us for the rest of your life? Think carefully. To your friends, I'll be a divorcee with a trailer. I think that's what they call it now. Jacob gave a short laugh. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I'm going to marry you, not public opinion. Christina, I've loved you since the 5th grade. It's just that you got lost after school, and when we met, you were all ready. Don't continue. Softly said the girl and again pressed against him in a tender kiss. Jacob, there is only one thing I want to warn you about. What is it? Her companion frowned slightly. If you betray me, I'm like that mermaid. I won't survive it. My heart just can't take it anymore, and I'll turn to foam. Jacob lovingly embraced Christina, and they looked up at the huge moon hanging over their heads. Then it's in my interest to keep you from turning into a mermaid. Jacob smiled. You will remain a man, a woman, and my wife, and the mother of Ethan, and then, perhaps, of our children. Oh, Jacob, blissfully whispered Christina and pressed against the shoulder of her lover. You've always been like that since high school. What? Cheerfully asked her man. What funny? Joyfully touching the tip of his nose, Christina shrieked with happiness, and they spun in a silent dance on the sidewalk. That evening was one of the most beautiful in the young mother's life. That evening on their way back, they stopped at Vanessa's house, where Ethan was visiting. Christina asked the woman for permission to leave her son with her for a few hours, and the former teacher gladly agreed. Christina wanted to pick up her boy to go to her apartment with him. But no sooner had she and Jacob made a couple of steps towards the entrance, as the road was blocked by a huge black Jeep, painfully familiar to the young woman. Hello, wife. Kevin fell out of the cab and greeted his wife with a slurred tongue. Noticing a companion beside her, the businessman immediately dared, trying to pretend that he was fine. Kevin, why did you come here? Christina marveled at his appearance. In fact, how did you find me? The woman smelled the strong odor of very strong drink coming from her husband. Kevin had definitely had too much cognac. God, buddy, how could you even get behind the wheel in such a state? Asked Jacob. And he carefully stepped in front of Christina and closed her from her husband with his back. Kevin's gaze was cloudy, but Kevin could read the displeased expression in it. That's right, hide her from me. She's such a treasure, and if she runs away from you, you'll be looking for her for 6 months. Kevin, what do you want from me? I ask you again? Christina stepped forward. She really wanted to get this over with once and for all. How so? Her husband tried to take an upright position, but he did not succeed, so that he had to lean on the door of his own car again. I want to talk to my wife and see my son. Christina was indignant. For a second, she even lost the power of speech. Wow, and you were good. You did not waste time. Kevin said. Vaughn found another sponsor, or wait a minute. The businessman took a closer look at Jacob. So it's the same face in profile. Dan, Christina, so you were having an affair with that creepy guy after all. I guess I was fooled after all, wasn't I? Christina did something she'd wanted to do for a long time. She went over and gave her scoundrel of a husband a well-deserved slap. He wants to see his son. That's how you talk. And when we had nothing to eat, because you blocked all our cards, did you also think about your son? Or maybe when you slept with your secretary, you only dreamed of reading a bedtime story to your newborn son. You're a bastard, Kevin. The lowest, meanest person I've ever known. And speaking of Ethan, you shouldn't have come. If it makes you feel any better, he's not your son. Ethan is my child alone. And believe me, I'm raising him to be a normal person, not like you. Turning on her heels, Christina wanted to leave, but Kevin suddenly grabbed her arm. You're stupid. Don't you know what you're doing? Yeah, we had a little fight, but you should have understood me too. I pressed my mother later, by the way. She admitted that she set you up, that it wasn't your fault. Congratulations, with irony, said Christina, and pulled her elbow from his weak grip. The mystery is solved, but you're too late. I have a different life now. Christina, you're not leaving me. Kevin shouted to her and tried to hug her, but Jacob stepped in. Hey you, get your hands off her. The girl told you clearly that she doesn't want to talk to you anymore. What more do you want? You lost your chance, so go away. Who the hell are you to talk to me like that? Kevin was outraged. I'm her lawfully wedded husband, and who are you? You're a lover, a party boy. Kevin tried to hit his opponent. However, Jacob easily dodged and gave the offender a light kick in the shoulder area. It was enough to make Christina's husband unable to keep his balance and fell on his back. Fortunately, Jacob managed to pick him up in time and load him into his own car. God, what are we going to do with him now? Asked a confused Christina. Obviously, we cannot leave him here in this condition. But I don't want him to sleep in Ethan's in my apartment. Don't worry, we'll order a cab and have a tow truck take him home to his mother. And the car to the impound lot so he doesn't get any more trouble. Agreeing that Jacob's plan was logical, Christina called all the necessary services from her phone. When she gave the cab driver the address, Kevin came to his senses for a few minutes and mumbled something like, You were always right. Mom was right, but I loved her so much. Jacob glanced questioningly at Christina, but she shrugged her shoulders in confusion. Feeling responsible for her ex-husband, Christina later called back the cab dispatcher and made sure that Kevin was driven home without incident. That was the end of their unexpected encounter. Going to bed that night, Christina thought about filing the divorce papers herself. Of course, she would not claim a penny of his money, but she just wanted to close this unfortunate chapter of her life and think about what good things might await her together ahead with Jacob. The next 2 weeks passed for Christina as usual, with work and taking care of Ethan. Every now and then she would see Jacob, and they had a wonderful time together. The man could surprise Christina with the most ordinary things, like cheesecakes in the morning or choosing her favorite movie for movie night. And as it turned out, they didn't have to spend $1 million at all to feel completely happy. Christina filed the divorce papers first, but she never heard back, deciding that Kevin was probably being stubborn again or doing some nonsense like making another revenge plan. The woman let the situation go and went on about her usual business. Toward the end of the week on Friday, the doorbell of her new apartment rang unexpectedly. Since Christina had the day off that day, she was very surprised. She and Jacob had agreed that they would meet only in the afternoon and that he would not bother her in the morning and would let the young mother sleep. Opening the door, Christina was immediately awake, but also pale. On the threshold stood Clara. She was all in black, her eyes were full of inexpressible sadness, and it was as if she had aged 10 years. "I know you are not very happy about my visit. My mother-in-law started at the door, but I couldn't help but tell you this sad news. Clara, what's going on?" Christina was worried sick. "Come in. Would you like water or tea?" "Water will be fine." The old lady thanked her. She held a thin cotton handkerchief to her mascara-smeared eyes. "Sit down." Clara asked her when Christina brought her a glass. "I need to have a serious talk with you." "Jesus, I've lived to tell the tale. I don't even know where to begin." Christina waited patiently for what her mother-in-law would say, while she looked toward the crib, where her son was about to wake up. "In general, I know that you have filed the divorce papers with my son. Started it. And believe me, I would have been happy if you were separated, but circumstances have changed. Clara, please," Christina asked her. "Ethan will be awake any minute. He needs to be fed. I haven't even put water under the porridge yet." "Ethan?" She cheered up. "That's a nice name. Christina, you don't have to divorce my son because he's gone. He's dead." Christina was struck by lightning. "What are you talking about? What do you mean dead? I just saw him a couple weeks ago. I wondered how he found me." "It's true, Christina. Our Kevin is gone. He's dead, okay? He died in a car accident." Clara could no longer contain her grief and burst into tears. And no handkerchief could help her absorb the grief of her son's untimely death. But how could this have happened? Christina was the only one who could find the words to ask. She couldn't believe what had happened. Her brain simply refused to accept this information. Even with all the pain that lay between them, she never wished such a fate for her husband. "After you left, he wasn't himself," the mother-in-law began. "As it turned out, he already had serious problems in business, and your departure only aggravated everything." The woman pressed her handkerchief to her eyes again. "I hope you realize that I was not the cause of the breakup of my family with Kevin." Cautiously, Christina asked. "Of course not, Christina. I'm so ashamed now. If you only knew. Forgive me if you can," she said sincerely. And something in her words convinced the woman that Kevin's mother was telling the truth. "I've been so unfair to you, so cruel. I went and bought that damn tie myself just to belittle you in my son's eyes. You old fool." The mother-in-law was silent for a while before continuing. Her son's problems had gotten to the point where he had to borrow a very large sum of money from some very dangerous people. And then the deal he was counting on fell through. And now my son is trying to get rid of these bandits by any means necessary. but they only intensified. They said that if you don't pay back the money in time, you and your business will be finished. It wasn't an accident. Was he helped into it? With pale lips, Christina asked. I'm afraid he helped himself. Hardly, sighed the mother-in-law. He started drinking very heavily, gambling, hoping thereby to make more easy money. But it was all in vain. His whole life and business had collapsed in just a few weeks. The police said that when they found his car, it was like a tin can. An old woman cried softly. The doctor said he had off the charts booze in his blood, so I really want to believe it was just an accident, but we'll never know the truth. God, Clara, I'm so sorry. Christina shook hands with her mother-in-law. Believe me, if you need help, I'll do anything. Just say the word. No, honey, it's okay. We already buried Kevin last Sunday. But thank you for your condolences anyway. It's unexpectedly nice to hear from someone you practically left in the dust. God, if you only knew how disgusted I am with myself when I realize how easily and aimlessly I ruined your life, just for fun, just to show Kevin that I am better than you and you are not worthy of my son. Calm down, Clara. Christina smiled weakly. I've been doing fine for a long time. I'm with Ethan, and this is the greatest gift your son could give me. Her mother-in-law smiled back shyly and then asked quietly, Christina, sweetheart, can I see Ethan, at least with one eye? This request greatly surprised Christina. She had thought that this woman wanted nothing to do with her and her grandson. After thinking for a while, Christina asked, Are you sure? Mind you, I'll go for him like a wolf. I'll go straight for his throat. No, no, no. The old woman waved her hands at her. I know that you gave birth to my son, but only now I realize that Ethan is the only thing left in this world of my poor Kevin. Let's go then. Nodded Christina and led the old woman to the crib. Oh, he's so cute. He looks just like Kevin when he was a baby. She pressed her hands to Clara's face. Christina, I beg you, let me see my grandson, at least sometimes, at least a couple of times a month. Christina only smiled calmly. From the fact that I forbid you to see him, you will not cease to be his own grandmother, Clara. Of course you can communicate with your grandson. Just call me first so I can get a time frame. Okay, I have a job, and I'm not alone anymore. My mother-in-law pressed her lips together, but didn't say anything. It was too precious to her to be able to see her with her little Ethan. Besides, she and Christina had nothing more to share. Clara had lost her son, and her daughter-in-law her husband, who had betrayed her by believing the words of his treacherous mother. Christina was right. That's where she and her son turned out to be both good. A few months later, Christina and Jacob played a beautiful wedding in nature. There were many guests among their friends and employees from the car dealership. The celebration turned out to be very heartfelt and light, not like the stuffy social reception that Christina had to endure in her first marriage. Clara was also at her ex-sister-in-law's second wedding, and to her surprise, she experienced an amazing mental comfort from the fact that she didn't have to keep her face in front of someone all the time, but on the contrary, she could just relax. She continues to socialize with little Ethan and really enjoys it. The woman was forced to sell her son's luxurious mansion for debts, and now she lives in a modest 2-room apartment where she receives her acquaintances and Christina and her grandson. Jacob and Christina still work in a car dealership. Their business is gaining momentum, and they are considered one of the most successful players in the car market. Recently, Christina delighted her husband with the news that she is expecting a baby again. The ultrasound showed that it will be a girl, so Ethan will soon have a baby sister. That's how a bad daughter-in-law was able to literally build her life anew and even help her once conniving mother-in-law realize one simple lesson. There is always room for boomerangs in life, and evil, as well as good, is sure to return to the one who committed it.